What's up, everybody? You're back with the Chosen Con, and today in the studio we have with us Miss Amrita Lit, right? Is it Amrita Lit?
Yeah, that's my maiden name.
What is it like? The author name too is Amrita Lit.
Yeah. I go with my maiden name for all my writing. I've just stuck to lit just because it's a play on the word literature.
I always thought that's why you did it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't believe it's my last name, but it's actually my last name.
It was meant to be that you became a writer.
You know what?
Yeah.
Amrita Literature was my nickname in high school. Like, I remember in English literature class, people used to call me Amrita Literature.
That's crazy because that's like, okay, for people that don't know, Amrita has her own book, and that's how actually I was introduced to you. It was Aaron, but Aaron was telling me that, hey, look, my sister-in-law has this book, and I was seeing it on my feed randomly. It was like Chasing Kismet, and I was like, what is this? Then I met you. Yeah. And you passed me the book.
Yeah.
And I remember I just dove into it. And I read a lot. I love reading.
Uh-huh.
So when I read this book, it was just so different because it was spot on with what goes on in Surrey.
Yeah.
Right? Like all the words and everything like that. And I was like, holy crap. Like there's just so much I guess, juice in this book, too, that most people never use.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually Aaron who was the one who really encouraged me to add in that Surrey effect to it, because I felt like really I needed to be careful with the wording, and it wasn't raw enough. And she read the draft, and she's like, I need more. Like, I need to feel Surrey through the words. And that's when I threw in the fight scenes and the swear words. That's Surrey, right? So that's what came out of it. But I think that's what people like the most about it.
It was real.
Yeah.
Right? I remember reading it, just the emotions, right? The swear words, things like that most people, we don't even talk about.
Yeah.
That's what I loved, was the fact that it was about brown people, right? Talking about subjects, like even just alcohol or just relationships, things like that, the way you painted it. For me, when I read it, I was like, I got a bunch of friends that are just like this.
Yeah. I mean, I had a set of topics that I knew I wanted to weave into the story somehow, like the alcoholism, the homophobia, the mental illness stigma, all those really heavy topics that usually people shy away from or they turn a blind eye to it just because it makes you uncomfortable. But I felt like if I put it into the story in an entertaining and engaging way, and I drew people in from the start, then it would help to get them to care about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of from the start, I just even wanted to know a little bit more about you, right?
Yeah.
I remember when we hung out, at West Village Cafe. Shout out West Village Cafe. All right, that's all the great conversations happening.
Right
it
now.
Is the hit spot for all like the creatives. Like check it out, Paul's the man. But West Village Cafe, we were chilling there, and I remember we had a deep conversation just about like your history and how you like started writing and all of that.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people right now like they're finding out who Amrita is, but I want to know who you truly are. Like what drove you to writing? Like as a young kid, where are you from?
So I was born in Prince George.
Nice.
But mostly I grew up in Surrey. I mean, I went from Prince George to Coquitlam, and then by grade 9 I was in Surrey. So my high school life has all been here. But I can't say like I was a writer from a very young age. I always had a knack for it, so it would be pointed out to me. Like I would excel more in English classes, and like my teachers would get really pumped for poems that I didn't even understand what I was writing. Like in grade 4 when you do those haiku poems and stuff, and they would just be like, this is brilliant, and it was like beyond my years at the time. But I mean, I didn't focus on it until way later in life. And I think what we talked about that time is that I always felt like I didn't have an identity. I didn't have a strength. I wasn't the sports kid. I wasn't ever a part of any extracurricular activities. I just kind of like shied away from being in the spotlight a lot. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, after I was like in university that I realized, hey, writing's my thing.
Yeah.
And that if you want to be an author, if you want to be a writer, all you got to do is believe it. A lot of people come up to me and they'll ask me, well, how'd you do it? How'd you write the book? Like, what do I need to do that? And I'm like, you just got to believe it. You're your own worst demon, right? Yeah. So forget the critics, forget all that. You got to first believe it yourself. So I just one day decided that's my thing. That's my edge. I'm a writer. I'm an author. Yeah. And I went with it.
That's a hard thing to do, what you just said, though, right? Being able to believe in yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
That's what I'm finding, too, is that, like, the doubt creeps in.
Yeah.
For me, especially, like, even just doing something different, following your passion, at the beginning, it's the hardest time, too, because first of all, no one believes in you at that time.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your own belief, that's when you kind of crumble and you start like being like, no, I got to regress. Never mind. It's not for me to be an author or to be, I don't know, whatever, an interviewer or whatever it may be.
And
right?
yeah, and I had those moments. I remember during the process of writing the book, I would have moments where I'd slam my laptop shut and I'd be like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. Or a little bit of negative feedback from somebody, and that's it, right? But and you know what? Positive reinforcement does help. I'm not gonna lie. When I started putting blogs out, which is where I started before putting the book out.
When did you do the blogs?
So I started the articles for like a few local newspapers and magazines, and then I started my own blog. I started submitting to HuffPost, and that's what built my confidence, because then when I started, the comments started rolling in and the messages started rolling in, then it was like, okay, I can do this. As much as I say it's all about your own belief in yourself, you still do need that positive reinforcement to keep you going. So yeah, the initial start was all just me deciding, this is what I want to do, this is who I want to be, this is how I'm going to set myself apart from like what I do for a 9 to 5. But yeah, I mean, people being like, oh, I totally get what you mean, thank you for writing this, these words helped me. I mean, that's what made me keep going.
I remember something else when we talked was that you were saying your whole life you never really took crazy chances or risks. And then it was only once you actually had your son that you're like, holy crap, this is like, remember you're talking about that? Because I don't know what it feels like to have a baby.
Yeah.
Right? Well, go ahead.
You know, it's one of those things, until you become a parent, you just don't realize the grand responsibility of shaping a life. Like, I did not take that lightly. I don't think anyone should. If you make the decision to create a life, you're responsible for that life for a said period of time. And all I could think about when I had him, or even when I first just found out about him, is how can I shape him into the best possible version of himself? And then I realized I needed to work on myself first.
Yeah.
So I needed to face my fears first. I was a very self-conscious person. Doing this 3 years ago, not a chance. I was a person who I couldn't even introduce myself. You know, forget to a group of people or in a public setting, even just one-on-one. I shied away from any type of social interaction. That was just my own demons that I needed to deal with, that I needed to face. But I realized that I can't help him grow if I don't grow first myself. So becoming a mother really made me grow up quick. It really made me like set my priorities in line and realize who I wanted to be and who I want him to be.
And were you writing while you were pregnant or after he was born? Like.
No, I did start when I was pregnant. I took super long breaks from it. It was even like, it was a project I started before like I even found out I was pregnant or anything like that. But then I would take long breaks from it. Like I said, I would hear a little bit of negative criticism, and then I'd be like, I'm not doing this anymore. And
it's
I would just, it's a big piece of you. Even if it's fiction and it's not your story, it's still your work. It's still your art. Like literature is still art. Yeah. So it is very personal. It's like leaving your soul out there for everyone to see. But yeah, I mean, on and off, it took me about 2 years to write. And I only started taking it seriously after I had him, though.
That's incredible, because I guess your university time too, like taking it back another step. Mm-hmm. When you were in university, what were you doing? What was your major? Was it literature?
Psychology. My background's in psychology. I was always more interested in human interaction, human behavior, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be like a writer. Originally I was in creative writing, and then I let too many voices get in my head, like, well, what's going to become of that?
What money?
Where's the money? Exactly.
Wasting your life.
Yeah, but then what's funny is I don't even have a career in psychology either, but I mean, yeah, there's tons of writing in psychology too, so that helped me refine my skill for sure.
And when I read the book too, what I found was that there's a lot of psychology inside that book.
Yeah,
right?
that seeps through.
100%. I think that's key that you're back, because I did psychology at UBC for a while too.
Oh, nice.
Then I switched majors. Mm-hmm. But psychology, like, it really opened up my mind, realizing that, okay, this is why, like seeing why people maybe think a certain way or why things are happening. Like it was interesting for me looking at it from that introspective part as well. So when I read the book, seeing the mental health issues too, like different things like that, I could see, okay, yeah, you do have a psychology background. Like it does seep in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if that came before I did the degree or after. Maybe that was just always my nature, and that's what drew me to that major in the first place. But for sure, I find like psychology, it's something that can be applied to your everyday life. I mean, it makes you understand the inner workings of a person's mind, and sometimes that's not a good thing. Sometimes you don't even want to know what's going on, but you can't help but see it all around you.
That's cool. Today I was actually reading a book. It's called Mastery. So I've been reading it for a while. Great book. Check out that book. It's incredible. But it was talking about Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
And he really started understanding people's perspectives, and he used that to his benefit to like realize, okay, that's why this person is acting this way. I mean, okay, I'm gonna figure that out and then talk to them at a deeper level or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so what's crazy, this is what I bring it up to. It's funny, I was reading this today. So basically, Benjamin Franklin, his brother owned a printing company.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin loved to write.
Yeah.
He loved to write.
Oh, yeah.
But his brother's like, there's no way I'm going to put you in my newspaper. He owned a newspaper. And he's like, no, you're not good enough, whatever.
Yeah.
So what Benjamin Franklin started doing was he started like sending these articles, like you know how you have the Huffington Post articles. He'd send him these letters about society from from this woman. He'd pretend he was this woman. And in the book, what it was saying was that Benjamin Franklin basically like created this person and like fully like created a whole life for them. So when he'd be writing as them, he'd actually be like he'd be in that mindset.
Become that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you was like when you're writing, like do you like these characters, like what's that like as an author? Because I have no idea. Right? Like, do you get into their shoes and say, like, this is how I'd react? Or, like, what's it like?
I wouldn't say I became each of the characters, more so that I would pull bits and pieces of the personalities around me or people I had interviewed or just anybody in my own inner circle and put them into the book. And a lot of people, they like dwelled on that when I first released it. They'd be like, oh, who's so-and-so? Like, who's that character based on? What's that? Did that really happen? Did you go to Whistler and do drugs? I'm like, no, man. Like, I was mega sheltered. And a lot of the material I had to ask my husband about. I had to ask him about, like, what's Molly and how do you do it? Is it a powder?
Do you inject this? What do you do? I don't understand.
Honestly, I had to ask him that. And I won't say why he knows that, but he explained it all to me.
He watched some YouTube videos, man. He read some articles.
He got a book and he read up on it.
So this is what you do with Molly. All right, I understand. So that's what you did, though. You were just asking a bunch of, like, did you interview people, like, one-on-one? Like, what was that like?
So the interview, what I was talking about is prior to writing the book, when I wrote for the newspapers and magazines and all that, like people I would be assigned to interview, the topics that would always come out of those interviews would be like the mental illness stigma, the homophobia, alcoholism is huge in the South Asian community, unfortunately, and drug use amongst the youth. And I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that, but that's the cold, hard truth. And that's why I want like parents to read this too, because it'll give them insight into what's going on in their kids' lives and their kids' heads, and instead of being like completely oblivious to it and being like, oh, that's not my kid, that's the neighbor's kid doing that or whatever.
It's always the neighbor's kid.
Yeah, or if they do like it's right in their face and they catch their kid doing it, then it's the neighbor's kid's influence. Like they'll never ever internalize what's going on, but that's a whole different topic. But I do think it would be beneficial for a lot of people who are older and who have teenage kids to read this.
No, I agree with you, because what I found, so Baljeet, even from Motherhood, he was telling me him and his wife read it together. She'd read it to him every night. Such a romantic man, right? But he was telling me that it's something that, definitely like his kids, like it would get them to read it. For me, what I find is that it's a book that, like I said, I read a lot. And there's a lot of books that just like, they're so like, there's a lot of big words and the jargon and all of this, right? With this, it was like I read it and it was just like it was simple. That's the key, though, right? That anybody can pick it up. You were telling me one thing that I really loved. You said a lot of people are messaging you saying that this was like the first book that they've like ever read type of thing.
That was like the most rewarding thing, is even like when the chapter stores were like, I don't know what you put into this book, but you're bringing in people that would never otherwise step foot into our store. And that made me so happy. I mean, what more can you ask for at that point? Because I just have such a high regard for literature and reading, and just some people, they don't share that love because they haven't had the relatable content. There is nothing like that out there. And that was one of the driving forces for me putting the book out there, was because growing up, I didn't have books like this to read, or I couldn't relate to the stuff in TV shows and movies. So I thought, why don't I create it, right? To help people not feel as alienated and as different and more aware of their own differences. Instead, make them feel like, yeah, there is a representation of me out there.
Yeah, you know what's really beautiful too? I look at the history of books, and back in the day, it was only rich people or very, I guess, influential people like that had access to books, and so they were able to like have this knowledge and then utilize it and make money or whatever it may be. And then there's a printing press that was created, and then books just started coming, right? And then it started getting out to other people, and so we started being able to read, and then like you're saying, it really dipped off. Right? It's like now we have all this content and crap out there in the world we live in. And with books, like one thing, so last year, my whole life, I always read books. Like I didn't realize it until I reflected on it as a kid. When I'd be having a bad day, I'd grab a Harry Potter book. I read like all 7 Harry Potter books about 15, 20 times each.
It was your escape.
Oh, it was 100%. I was like, I wish I had this scar on my forehead. You know? And I lived on this cupboard. I went to Hogwarts. But I was reading it, and it really, like you say, it was an escape. But it was such a great hobby, because then last year when I really picked up books properly again, it was just like, it was like riding a bike. I mean, like I just grabbed it and I'm like, oh, I used to always do this, right? In the morning, I was reading this book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. You should check it out. It's like
You read a lot of books, man.
Love reading.
You read more than me. You should write a book.
No, man, that's the thing. Is like, even from learning from you, Amrita, it's become a possibility, right? That one day I'd love to write something and
Why
get it out
not,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Why
That's
not?
something to talk to you about, like even a little bit too, right? Is how people can write. But even going back though, I was reading this book and I realized, I'm like, look, people don't understand that you just gain so much knowledge. You have so much fun. Like when I read your book, I had fun. Like I'll tell you this. So I read a lot of books simultaneously. That's the way I like read. So I'll be like, and then there's books.
I could never do that.
No, I don't know why. It's like, but then when I was reading yours, I was like, because it was for me with fiction books too. I really get like into them if they're good. So when I was reading Chasing Kismet, I'm like, what's Roger gonna do now? You know what I mean? I feel like this guy. I feel like Roger. I'm like that certain actor.
I remember you saying that.
And so I was just reading it, and just like, and the thing about your book too is that there's so many like you're like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then you're like, okay, you mean there was a lot of those moments. So I just kept turning it, and I read it. I think in like, in a day, like I just finished it. And for me, I think that's the key. Is if one kid, when I read one book, and I learned so much from it, like I saw my life change. It just snowballed. And the kids that I think people that are reading your book, you're getting other kids like hope to like, hey, you know what? There might be other books out there.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Did you think, was that ever like your mindset? Or you were just like, no, I'm going to do this.
No, I never thought that like guys would be reading this and people who don't typically read would be reading this. I mean, I had the guidance of another local author, and she told me, she's like, she said it she put it in a really blunt way, and at the time I was kind of taken aback by her statement, but when she was talking about who I should market it to, she's like, market it to your people. There's millions of you here. And you all got copious amounts of money to blow. And I was
weddings,
like,
right too,
and I was like, and I was kind of like taken aback by her statement. But then I got to thinking, and I was like, why am I trying to make this so grand? Why don't I? Like, isn't that the whole point of this? So why don't I make it a book for South Asians? I mean, I didn't have that thinking until she put it into me. And sometimes that's all it takes, is just a little bit of guidance. But no, I definitely did not expect like the amount of people to be messaging me. And like, what more can you ask for? I mean, I was so happy that it was received in a positive light, because I think I would have been crushed had it not been. I can't sit here and say, oh, negative feedback doesn't doesn't faze me in the least bit. I mean, there's been some people few and far between. We talked about the simplistic language.
Yeah.
This one individual who was one of the first people to read it, he was somebody from my husband's social circle.
The crew, yeah.
And he was like, this book's all right. It's got a lot of, it's written really simplistically. It's not like the Da Vinci Code or something. And I'm like, but that wasn't my demographic and that wasn't my goal. And that's not the story. I mean, if you're writing about things like road trips and traveling and escaping really gut-wrenching life events and stuff like that, you don't need such complex jargon like you said, because the narrative and the storyline speaks for itself. 100%. So, yeah, I mean, that you take the negative with the positive, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion, so I didn't even bother like trying to sort out their thoughts about it or whatnot. But I can say 99% of the messages I get are all like, we love this, thank you, I read it in one sitting. And I mean, that just makes me so happy. Every time I get a message like that, I love it.
You're always going to have someone that doesn't vibe with it. That means you're doing something right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm finding. Like, if you're pleasing everybody, you're not really making them think.
Yeah,
that's what I realized. So maybe when he read that book, just hypothetical, I don't like to even assume, but maybe he's like, man, this is just like me and my buddies.
It hit a little too close to home.
Like, damn it, Amrita. Damn it. You mean, is that me? Am I that character? Holy crap. She just switched one letter up. You mean, maybe. You never know. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought about that too. But it's all good. Like you said, you can't please everybody.
You can't. And so are you thinking of writing another book right now, or are you just going to relax now? Because I know that you got the little homie inside there. Right? For those of you that can't see it, Amrita is pregnant.
Yep, I have.
It doesn't really seem like it.
Heavily pregnant right now. I'm gonna take a break. I'm expecting my second child in September. I also have a 2-year-old at home.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna take a break and then pick things up again in the new year. I have some ideas. I have some projects that I would like to do next year, but I think it's not even about like, taking a break and that sucks and I want to build on this momentum, because honestly it's these types of life experiences like being a mother and having another child and all that's going to enrich the type of material that I can put out next. 100%. Right? So let's say if I just stayed stagnant and I wasn't growing in my personal life, my family life, then maybe the next book to come out would just be a regurgitation of the same type of content, but this way it's going to be all fresh, all new stuff and new perspectives.
There's have you ever watched the show Master of None?
I've heard of it.
You gotta watch it.
Yeah,
you're gonna love it. You'll love it because it's intellectual, it's funny, and it's about like the Brown experience.
Yeah.
But why I bring it up, because Aziz Ansari, the guy who created it, said something just like what you're saying.
Okay.
So he did 2 seasons, and now it's like, look, they're just like going on like experiences of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And if they just try and keep recreating, it's gonna be the same thing, but they're like trying to live.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the key, I believe, is that as you get these life experiences, you're writing, like you said, it's gonna evolve.
Yeah. Right? It definitely adds value to the work.
Yeah.
For sure.
Just like when I went on this trip, I just came back from the whole Toronto one. I feel like, look, now it's like things have slowed down in my mind, more patience, like things like that. And it'll help me in whatever else I do. Yeah. But if I hadn't gone and I stayed stagnant, like you were saying, I'd be the same. Yeah. Right?
And you know, I feel like whatever next project I do, I really want it to be about bringing people out of that stagnant mindset, because I don't know why, but it just grinds my gears and it just like ticks me off when I see so many people being complacent and afraid to live just because of insecurities and just because they're not able to push comfort zones and they're not able to really chase their dreams. And everybody has dreams. Like, they're lying if they say, I'm happy the way I am and I'm fine where I'm at, because there's always room for growth. And that's going to be something I want to do. I really want to inspire others to follow their dreams, whether it's to write a book, start a podcast, YouTube, whatever. It doesn't even have to be in the limelight. Just anything that makes you happy, gives you that creative edge that's aside from your 9 to 5 to really give you your identity. That's so essential for like life fulfillment and all that, because I I needed this. I needed to have this identity in order to not feel suffocated by my life, because I mean I got married at 24, which is considered young now, and I was just kind of thrown into this role as daughter-in-law and wife, and I wasn't expecting my life to be so cookie cutter and so by the book, and it just turned into that, even though it wasn't like an arranged marriage or anything, where I've been with my husband since we were 15, so I mean it was our own choice, and all that, but I feel like it just became a lot to take in, like joining the family business and everything. So then I needed something to set me apart and make me feel like I was living a life that was for me too.
Yeah.
And I really hope that anybody who's feeling the way I was feeling maybe 2 years ago, that they find something to be their defining edge, that they find something to be their escape. Because, everybody needs that.
No, you know what's funny? Because I was having this conversation in Toronto.
Yeah.
Just like what you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of people, too, they buy in too much. So they like, okay, look, now they're married, they have a kid. Okay, now I got to put my dreams in this kid. Like, they just buy too much. I have this job, this is who I am. The fact that even you having a kid and even being, like you said, this cookie cutter lifestyle, like, you still were like, no, I'm going to still do this.
Yeah, it had the opposite effect for me.
Most people put their head down.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, you know what? Well, this is life.
Yep.
Right? This is it. I'm just going to live my whole... Like, you know how many... In the brown community.
Yeah.
How many people do you know, or that we collectively know, that they're just like, okay, this is the life I'm going to live now. I'm just going to work my dad's business, or I'm married now.
They're just going through the motions because that's what society expects them to do. Yeah. And I still check all my boxes. I still, get stuff done, and I contribute to the family business. And I'm a mom first and everything else second. But there is a way you can do it all. There is a way you can still be human and still satisfy your own desires and your own dreams and your own hopes and all that, and still fulfill your obligations at the same time. It can be done. It's not easy, but it can be done.
You're living your truth. That's right, the way I look at it. Right? Everyone, even in this book, Mastery, it's like everyone has their truth. Everyone has their calling. But most of the time, what happens is society tells you, no, stop for a second. That's not practical.
Yeah.
Be practical. Writing a book, are you crazy, Amrita? Right? But that's what, and then people, what they do is they buy into it. Kids, one thing I'm learning from this, I have my younger brothers, like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And they just look at life from such a, like, they're so curious. Like, why can't I do this? I'm going to do this. Things like that.
Yeah.
And I realized that as we get older, that just dies in us. Like, no, we can't do that anymore. No, I can't. I don't want to be. I can't be an astronaut. That's just so far outside the realm of possibility. But it's like, no, it's not. Right? You writing this book, I'm telling you, like, why I'm so glad that you're on this show today is because there's so many kids I know out there, like, Amrita, since I started, like, I posted some poetry on my Instagram feed, right, on my story and things like that. These guys, like, really, like jacked guys, are, messaging me, bro, I write poetry too, man.
Oh,
nice. Bro, like, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Just like how right now, like, at home, I have my sister, she writes.
Yeah.
And I gave her your book, and so I think she's reading it right now.
Yeah.
But it's just like you give them hope.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like, you have the fact that you're a mother and you're doing all that still, when it's like you're in too deep. You're like, no, I'm not. How is this? Like, people like, you have a kid. That's stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Like, you just have to raise your family now. But you're like, no, you're doing these things.
It's gonna make me a better mother at the end of the day.
Yeah. Your kids are gonna be like, my mom did that.
Yeah. Oh, you have no idea. He's only 2.
Yeah.
And he's like my biggest fan. And he sees me on TV and he'll be like telling kids at his preschool, mommy TV. Or like he'll come to my book signing events and he'll like bring people over and be like, mommy book. Like, he's so proud. And that made it so worth it to me. All those moments where I slammed the laptop shut and I wanted to turn myself off from it. Just seeing, like, he's 2 and he recognizes that I'm doing something against the grain. Yeah. That's something.
He feels it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, though. Kids vibe with it.
Everything worth it.
Yeah, kids vibe with that.
Yeah.
And like, I look at your family. So I look at Aaron, she's creative. Pratap is like, he's a creative dude too, just like in different ways.
Yeah.
And they were actually people that pushed me to start doing this as well.
Nice.
Right? Yeah. So I think that's a major key.
Yeah.
Right? If you have one person close to you that really, like Aaron, you were telling me, push you to just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And now I think you're that person for people. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any other authors in Surrey like that are writing stuff like this?
There are. So there's so when I had my book launch back in March, I actually invited a lot of writers and authors to it. And so there's Kamal Dillon, she wrote Black and Blue Sorry. Yeah. There's Raminder Sidhu, she wrote Tears of Mendi.
Oh damn! I gotta check these out too.
Yeah. There's a couple of them, and then there's so many people on Instagram who write poetry and stuff. I just kind of stepped into that world, and I more or less honestly just do it because sometimes I'm lying awake at night because of I just can't get comfortable to go to sleep because I'm nearly 8 months pregnant, and then I'll be like, I need to write. I need to write to feel better and to just collect my thoughts, and I share it because you never know who might, like you say, vibe with it. So yeah, I mean, I just started doing that, but I never thought poetry would kind of be my thing, but it's still just another form of expression.
Another avenue. Mm-hmm. I wanted to, what's it called? That's my fault. So I wanted to.
I was like, oh, I hope that wasn't me.
No, it's me, man. I always break the rules. Luke gets mad at me. But I even wanted to to even wrap up the whole interview. We were talking about pregnancy. Remember before they started, you're telling me all these things, and I'm like, I never thought about this. Yeah. So you were saying, okay, the first thing you were saying. Well, go to the gender thing. Mm-hmm. What was that? You were talking about, what is it? Gender
discrimination. So they have to have rules in place now where they do not reveal the gender to you until a certain amount of weeks, or else people who prefer to have a boy will go and have abortions. It's crazy, but it still happens. It still happens. So even though there's a loophole to that, they just go to the States and get it done. But obviously, that's morally wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, I didn't know. Right? Wow.
Yeah, women make the world go round, but still. And, things have changed so much because the preference for sons, like in the South Asian community, used to be because of land, because of
labor.
Property. You want to keep it in the family, right? You want to keep it to pass down to generations, and it only gets passed down to the son because the son keeps the last name and all that crap. And that happens across the board in other cultural backgrounds too. But so that's where it originates from. And I mean, you see all sorts of messed up stuff that still goes on, and it's really unfortunate that girls are not celebrated as much as boys are, but that hopefully that changes soon.
I think it's starting to already. Mm-hmm. And then you were telling me that when you do find out what the kid is, what do people do? Like the balloon thing?
Oh yeah, some people do like public gender reveals. So there's so many ways of doing it. Yeah. You can like make the inside of a cake that the color of the gender, so pink for girl, blue for boy. Yeah. Or you can like put confetti into a balloon and pop it and reveal it that way. And some people are really personal about it. Some people, they like putting it out there. But
yeah, wow, that's because this is, like I said,
it's so foreign to you, right?
I saw it, I saw it on Instagram, and Luke, I think, was saying he saw it on Reddit, and it's just like, I saw one video, and they like pulled down all this confetti, and they're like, it's a girl, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
It's a new thing. It's a gender reveal party. You know how people have baby showers and all that?
Yeah, is it a mix now, or they still do the baby showers and then a gender reveal?
I wonder about that. I think they do both, because a baby shower typically happens later, much later in your pregnancy, and a gender reveal happens a little bit earlier, around like 20 weeks. Wow. So when you're speaking about pregnancy, everything's weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm 32 weeks right now.
That's what you are. Okay,
yeah,
so, and
I'm
what's
like
the norm?
Ticking time bomb.
Yeah, I'm scared.
Full term is...
Luke, you ready, man? In case anything happens.
I still got 2 months, but full term is like 40 weeks.
Okay, so 40 weeks. And then when does it... Because I've always been fascinated about this, but when does it start, like 2-3 weeks, 4? Like, when do you start really noticing, like, you were talking about your appetite before to me, right? You were saying that the first child you had, like, you were eating a lot,
I was eating everything and anything in sight.
When did things start changing?
Well, you need to increase your calorie intake, but I mean, with my first pregnancy, I took that to another level. Yeah. I took eating for two very literal.
Just pounding it back.
Oh yeah, and my husband with me, like we were both like fresh baked cookies every night. You know those McCain cakes? That's still my weakness. Not the chocolate ones, the vanilla ones. It's all about the vanilla ones.
You're ruthless. You finished the whole thing in a night?
No, 2 or 3 nights. I mean, come on now. We're not savages. But I mean, and another thing that comes into play with like weight gain and all that is the fact that the first time around I got to just chill.
Yeah.
And I would be like, I don't feel like going into work today, family business, and
Yeah.
I just chill. But this time around, I have a 2-year-old who's like, get up, right?
Yeah,
when
yeah.
he's up, you're up, and he's go, go, go. They
Mm-hmm.
have plentiful energy, and it's just you gotta just go with it. But that's actually been a great thing for me because it's like a workout all the time. You're constantly chasing after them.
That's
So,
crazy. And then how is it like just okay? Because I'm tall, and so back pain is a big issue in my life.
Yeah,
So what's it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, this time around, definitely more aches and pains, and that just has to do with, I don't know, my doctor said it's because I'm older, but I'm only 2 years older. But it's stuff you deal with, and so there's 3 trimesters, and this is so funny that we're having a lesson on
learning
pregnancy.
about this. Is crazy, man.
Okay, so you can, just generalizing, but every experience is different. But for me, the first trimester is like just feeling like crap. You're exhausted, you're puking all the time. You're miserable, and you're like, why did I do this again?
Yeah.
Then the second trimester, you kind of forget you're pregnant and everything's chill, and you got this cute little baby bump, and you're going about your day. And
stop puking and stuff, or do you still?
Yeah, well, some people puke all the way up to the 40-week mark, but luckily, usually it subsides in the second trimester. And your second trimester it's really enjoyable, and you enjoy the pregnancy. You start feeling
the glow
movement
and all these things.
Yeah, you start feeling movement. It's really exciting, and then your third trimester, which is where I'm at, and the pain. It's just because, your body's accommodating for a human, and the human's getting bigger and bigger, and your back starts hurting, like you said, and all sorts of things start going on, and it gets hard to sleep.
Yeah.
So that's one big thing, but that's no sleep is like a writer's best friend. So it's actually been a perk for me.
Yeah. I bet. So whenever you can't sleep, you're just at your computer. Do you type it out or do you write it out?
No, it's so bad. It's all in my phone.
That's like
my.
So I'm not crazy.
Yeah, the storyline to the book. It's in my phone, dude.
On your notes or like what?
Yeah, in my notes. I can show you so many paragraphs, dialogues would come to me in the middle of the night. And I mean, I had a baby. I couldn't switch on the light and start writing. So I would just be under the covers, just texting on my phone and like typing out like, okay, then I want this to happen. Then I want this person to say this. And it always comes to you in the middle of the night.
Yeah. That's when you're creative because I guess the world is kind of asleep too.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool because I had this thought I think yesterday because I just write on my phone. Like I've been writing I have like a journal,
fine.
right? I'd write in my journal, but my handwriting is atrocious. So I'm like, if anybody ever finds this, is great because they won't be able to decipher it. But even when it's tough for me and I start squinting and I'm like, what the hell was I saying on like May 23rd? Like I don't understand. So I started typing it in my phone.
Yeah.
And just like you just said, at any moment, it's like this thought just came in, just write it down. That's crazy because I didn't know that your whole book, like not your whole book, but
no. Chunks of it, the inspiration for it, and then I would go fine tune it on my laptop, of course.
So you never wrote it down. You never needed to.
No, but I am more of a pen to paper kind of person for certain things. Like I like writing goals out in a journal and just like random thoughts and things like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff's in my phone.
That's cool. And then I guess like now to even wrap up, I just got a couple questions. Like, what's one of your favorite books that you'd recommend? Like anything.
So see, people ask me this, and then I always feel silly for my answer. I like reading those like really lighthearted chick lit books.
Yeah.
So like there's this series called the Shopaholic series.
Got it.
And what started me off in like, you know how you said as a kid you read a lot, then you took a long break and then you got back into it. So I only got back into it because my mom randomly brought a book home for me from the supermarket, and it was like when I was in between semesters, and she's like, she's always just watching TV. I'm gonna get her to read a book or something, right? And it was one of those like Shopaholic series books, and that got me so back into reading. And then but one of my all-time favorite books is called The Tea Rose. It's bad. The author's name has escaped me now.
Yeah,
but
the tea rose?
Yeah, so one of the most surreal moments I had was when I walked into South Surrey chapters and they had placed The Tea Rose and Chasing Kismet side by
No
side
way.
as good fiction reads. And I stood there for like dumbfounded for a few minutes, just being like, holy
I made it.
smokes, man. Yeah.
What's the tea rose about? Just a little bit.
So it's set back in the 1800s, and it's actually a story very ahead of its time, but it's all about female independence, and like she deals with some really heavy stuff. I remember reading the first few chapters and being like, I've never read a book like this before. The author killed off like 70% of the main characters.
Oh, Game of Thrones. I need to read this.
Right? And she kills them off straight away, and you're kind of like, what? Where's she going with this? What's left? But then it goes on this wild journey of this girl totally paving her own path and making her own way, and despite all adversity, she survives. And that is where the inspiration for this book came from, of what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a story about survival, perseverance, independence, female empowerment, all that stuff, which is in The Tea Rose. So, yeah, that's where you see the parallels.
That's crazy. I'll check it out. I think I'm going to read that soon, man. No, again, thank you so much, Amrita.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know it's hot in here.
It is.
It's tough.
Yeah.
But it's the hot seat. Mm-hmm. But again, thank you. And if people, will have all of your, your Instagram, will have your... how to even get the book, probably. Where can people get the book right now?
It's only available in the lower mainland of BC and Chapters, Coles, Indigo, Black Bond Books, select locations. In Surrey, it's available at India Book World. It's this cute little store in York Centre.
Yeah.
And then, of course, at my family's businesses, Prabhu Sweets and my dad's shop, Shahi Fashions. It's an East Indian suit store. It's so funny. My dad is like my number one sales guy. Yeah. And he'll be like, have you heard of this local author? Have you heard of this novel? And girls will be like, yeah, we've heard of it. We've seen it on social media and whatnot. And he'll be like, you should read it. And then, sometimes...
Buy a suit, get a book.
Sometimes he'll say it's my daughter and sometimes he won't. But it's just so funny watching him sell it. Yeah. And he's like my number one sales guy. It's hilarious.
That's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful sentiment too.
He's very proud.
Yeah, I bet, because you actually are doing something, like I said, that will inspire people to do, to get outside their box, right? You have, the tea has risen.
Yeah.
So again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Check out Amrita's book. I'm telling you, it's an incredible book, and we look forward to seeing y'all soon. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to The Chosen Cause. You have been a vital part of making this a reality. Please subscribe, check out the podcast, and watch a new video.